And good morning, everyone. It is Monday, October the 10th. I am Eden Hill, and this is Common Sense America. I've been jamming to that music. It's I-95 by Will Baker, who's a local musician here in Eastern North Carolina. It's so great to be here with you. I hope you grab your cup of coffee. We're going to have a great week ahead of us. And this morning, we have a very special guest who is local to Eastern North Carolina. She is an author, an educator. She's the director of Salt and Light Academy, and she's also an advocate for our students, our youth, and what is ahead for the next generation. So we're going to be bringing over Marcie Friesner to the show in just a hot second. But today, I know many of you are off because it is Columbus Day. And I just wanted to send out a couple shout outs to a couple schools in the area. Swansboro High School Marching Band. You guys were top notch on Saturday in the Mullet Festival Parade. Well done. I know that you guys are in many competitions in and around the area. So well done. Applause, applause. Keep up the great work. It's so great to go out and support you guys. Also out there to the Croatan High School. I have so many great students over there. One is an intern and one is only 14 and wants to be an intern with my media business. And I'm just so grateful for our youth and our next generation and what they are doing. I'm grateful for the churches. I'm grateful for the leaders. I'm grateful for their parents and their education. They are an amazing group of students. So I just wanted to thank those who are out there, and they know who I'm talking about. Also, today is World Mental Health Day. Today is Monday, October the 10th. It is World Mental Health Day. This whole week, we're going to be focusing and integrating in a lot of the political commentary that we bring to the show. World Mental Health Day. We're going to be talking about what's happening in our homes, what's happening in our social media, what's happening in our churches, what's happening in our schools. And that's why we're kicking off the week with Marcie Friesner. So I'm honored to bring her over here. And I see that she is joined and she's looking just lovely. Good morning, Marcie.
Good morning, Eden. Thank you. Thanks for the invitation.
Of course. I know you're busy this morning. You had another interview at 8:30 and with Pastor Greg. How was that?
Yeah, that was great. Yeah, he's a good guy. We had a great conversation. So
good. Well, Pastor Greg and I, for all of those who are tuning in, we're going to be cross-pollinating our shows tomorrow. And we're going to be doing a simulcast. So that's going to be good. And we're probably going to be talking about this hot topic as we are talking about this morning. And as I was talking to everybody in the audience who's listening in on Defenders Live and who's watching on all the social channels, today is World Mental Health Day. And I am wanting to speak with you and to kick off this week because you have a lot coming down the pike with a couple different things. First and foremost, I'm holding up your book for those who are watching. Everyone, this is Marcie's book, His Child. It's available on Amazon. If you go into the comments section of the social media, you will see the link on Amazon to go buy a book and check it out. It's a 40-day devotional. But in that, let's talk about the fact that you are an educator, you're an author, you were a safe house mom for human trafficking teenagers. You are so integrated in the Swansboro community. You have a lot of moving parts. And as you are reaching out to the community, being Jesus to the community, which you showed on what? Oh, yeah, Saturday. Mullet Festival.
Yeah, Saturday. Mullet Festival.
As you were driving down your big red truck, I'm like, oh my gosh, that's Marcie. You know, and I loved it because there was such a great energy about everybody who was coming down. Everybody was just so excited to be a part of a parade. But I saw you and I saw Jesus. And I was like, yes, that's awesome. That's what we need to be doing. So
yeah, you never know where you're going to find me.
I know. I love how you just pop up. Anyway, let's talk about World Mental Health Day, and let's talk about something that I know has been affecting this community rapidly more and more, and that is teen suicide. So why don't we break that down and just kind of kick off there, the mental health epidemic. I'll let you go ahead.
Well, it's no coincidence that God ordained for the book. The book was titled before I jumped on the project or was invited to jump on the project. His Child really says it all, and it speaks to where this identity crisis has come from. And the identity crisis is where the mental health comes into play as well, right? So the sooner we can understand our identity in Christ, the sooner we can overcome these mental health challenges. And we can talk about it from a more basic level. The bout of suicide, depression that I dealt with that led to some suicidal thoughts. You know, I can't even remember how long ago it's been, but it didn't last very long because I had the mental capacity to start early in that challenge and seek recovery. I had a lot of great people around me to love me through that season. And now with my peer support specialist certification, it's really understanding that we've created labels for people, you know, and we've started identifying people by their labels. And the sooner we can get away from that. So I hear people all the time, well, I have anxiety, or I have depression, or I'm extremely depressed, or I'm extremely anxious. The sooner we can learn to change our vocabulary, the sooner we can overcome those things, because I'm not depressed. I'm not anxious. That's a lie from the enemy. And the sooner I can say, I'm a child of God who is loved by him, who has, you know, everything in his kingdom is available to me as his daughter. He speaks that in his word. The sooner I can identify that and say, okay, I'm a daughter of the king who wrestles with or struggles with whatever disorder you want to fill in there, or mental illness or struggle, the sooner I let the enemy know his place is beneath me.
Right.
So I mean, I just feel so strongly about that. I just can't say that enough. And the co-author, S.A. Moore, that hot messery. That's his lingo that I love. You know, that God has called us out of the hot messery. We are a society that thrives on staying in it. Pharmaceutical companies thrive when we stay in our hot messery. Doctors' offices thrive when we stay in our hot messery. As a missionary, I've been to some hot places. Haiti was one of the hottest places I've done mission work. And I didn't think I was going to survive. Seriously, just no plumbing at all. Like, couldn't take a shower for the week I was there. And then, you know, wearing the bug spray to combat the mosquitoes plus the heat, just goes on and on and on. I had to know my place with my identity in Christ. I had to know that he had better plans for me, that I could overcome those physical ailments. Seems kind of trivial sitting here in my air conditioned room, you know, with my hot cup of tea, kind of a juxtaposition. But I mean, like, my comforts, I've got my warm green tea. I've got the coolness in the room just the way I need it.
Yeah.
And it's crazy to think back to what I was living with in Haiti, but it's all perspective. That's the whole focus of the 40 days of devotion is finding our perspective. And I'm sorry, I'm just going 1,000 miles an hour.
No, you're good. But, no, you're good. I'll do this. I'll do this when I want to. No, you're good.
Okay,
Keep going. You're on a roll, and we're going to loop back to a couple things. So go.
So this suicide epidemic, this crisis that we're in, and it's not just teenagers, but it impacts us harder when it is, because we don't feel like a life should be taken so young.
Right.
But anybody who struggles with this is ultimately struggling with a depression and a mental illness that has brought them to a place where they think there is just no alternative. So the hot messery, if you want to call it that, consumes their mind. So again, the sooner we can create safe schools, safe churches, safe houses for people to come out of that mental mindset, the sooner we can grab a hold of this epidemic and we can change it. We can flip the script. I'm looking at the statistics from 2020, just in the United States. So per 100,000 in the US, if you look at ages 10 to 14, there's a 2.8 per 100,000. You bump up that next age bracket from 15 to 24, and you jump up to 14.2. You've gone from 3 to 14 per 100,000. This is crazy. So what's happening? What's happening from 15 to 24 that wasn't happening from 10 to 14? Well, right away we could say puberty. Puberty is one of the hardest things we've ever had to endure. But we could hone in on some of these things. We could really utilize that and use that to our advantage. Let's grab a hold of these kids. Let's okay, let me step on toes. Let's chuck their iPhones and their
Yes,
tablets
thank you.
and their video
Thank you.
game systems.
Thank you. Thank you.
And let's
Yes.
wrap them up. Let's take them fishing. Let's take them to the Mullet Festival and watch the parade. Not behind my screen at the parade.
Yes.
I mean, if we
Yes.
would do that, we could reverse this thing in a heartbeat. I'm convinced. It's not rocket science.
Well, I just put on the screen, there was an article that came out just a little bit ago from Family Research Council, a very conservative think tank in Washington, D.C., faith-based conservative think tank. And the title of the article is Depressed Teens, Unsuppressed Phone Addiction. And the article goes on to talk about the new CDC data on American high schoolers' mental health echo a cry for help. More than a third reported, quote, poor mental health. 44% felt sad or hopeless, and in around 1 in 10 attempted suicide. It is a mental health crisis, said Dr. Jennifer Bowens, Director of Center for Family Studies at Family Research Council. They went on to say the crisis predated the COVID, but the lockdown certainly intensified it. She also went on to say the attachment security scores have been gradually decreasing since 1990s. She noticed that impact while teaching graduate students upon comparing notes with another teacher. They both noticed students were less mature and slower to attain development milestones into their 20s. This presents a huge problem. Quote, we have a generation that doesn't have a connection to other human beings.
Exactly.
They are very emotionally fragile and susceptible to all kinds of mental health issues. They have no sense of identity. What do you say to that?
I say 100%. I would agree 100%. I've got 29 years teaching experience in my pocket. And a lot of that, my passion is high schoolers. My love is middle schoolers and high schoolers. That's where God has placed my giftings. And I see that. When I have kids, this is so great. I'm thinking about when Lisa Carpenter came and visited one of our
She's
runners
been on the
for Ogden
show.
County Commissioner, came and visited the school this week. She had to take a back seat to a senior because Seth rolled up in front of the school and the kids haven't seen him this school year. He was here last year, but it's not here this school year. That man was a celebrity amongst these kids.
Oh.
But let me just tell you, she was happy to take a back seat to him. We were overjoyed to watch the interactions with these kids because we've created an environment where when they walk in the door, we take their cell phones, we put them in a bubble envelope and set them at the teacher's desk. I'm telling you, there's not too many high school teachers who would probably even try that in their classrooms today.
Right.
But the sooner we can show them, you can trust me, here's the basket, here's where I'm putting it, whatever the case may be. Once we earn their trust, then they start interacting with each other. And I'm talking about kids who, when you look at their folders, when you look at their CUME folders and you see their backgrounds, there is no way those kids would sit in a room together, let alone become friends and enjoy each other's company. And that's exactly what's happening.
Right.
I love it. And so, yes, everything that she said in that article is spot on. We do not have the ability to think for ourselves. Mm-hmm. And so teachers are really frustrated because they're having to do all the thinking for their students. And it's challenging. Parents are doing all the thinking for the kids. I mean, even at the high school level, there are so many, it's really bad. If we could go back to the Harris brothers who wrote the Do Hard Things over a decade ago, they were saying like teenager has become just a word for excusing a few years of their lives, letting them veg out on the couch. We're grateful if they remember to put some deodorant on. I mean, we've got to get away from that. We've got to start loving them. We've got to start pushing them. We've got to start raising the expectation.
Well, let me ask you about Salt and Light Academy. So my friend Catherine Haley, who has been at the highest levels of government, was on last week. She's with the Oak Rose Group. And she was talking about in the great state of Arizona, what they are doing. and she talked about learning pods that basically began during COVID because it was another method to make sure these kids still got some type of an education. I
Right.
shared with her about Salt and Light Academy. So could you break it down for the audience what Salt and Light Academy's overall mission is? As I was sharing with everybody at the parade on Saturday, oh, what's Salt and Light? Oh, what's Salt and Light? So I did it in my own way of like, I saw this as a learning pod as as Catherine explained it, and as I've been watching you working with all these
Yeah.
kids. But I explained it, it's a homeschooling school,
Right.
So talk to us about Salt and Light, and talk to us about some of those triggers that you see on a daily basis, even after you take this little puppy away and put it in a bubble envelope. What kind of triggers do you see, and what can we as caregivers, grandparents, parents, aunts, uncles, etc., look for in our teenagers as trigger points that we need to be aware of?
Yeah, thank you. So Salt and Light Academy was birthed as a 5-day-a-week Christian school. And then as the needs of our community started to change, we started adapting our programming to meet the needs of our local community. So it's called a homeschool hybrid because we're not a co-op. A lot of homeschoolers, they take their children to co-op experiences for, a couple hours a day or something like that, or once a week. We are a drop-off program. We're a one-room classroom. We do serve students in grades K through 12, and we're helping families however that looks. So we do have families that have homeschooled forever and love the idea of a classic classroom setting. We have others that have never homeschooled a day in their lives, but they're very frustrated with their child's educational experiences and want something different. So we collaborate with the whole family to create the best experience we can. We write curriculum, we develop it, we help choose it, we implement it. We are teachers, and so we implement the curriculum, and we're here to assist in any way we can. Our whole motto is to take people from just surviving to thriving.
Mm.
And I can tell you, how a parent testify that prior to her child being at Salt and Light, that child was emailing or calling, or the school was emailing or calling mom easily a dozen times a day with the challenges they were facing.
Oh,
She's
wow.
lucky if she even hears from her child during a school day here, because we started at the beginning, loving the family right where they were in their challenges. Instead of saying, well, you're just going to come in here and we're going to expect you to do X, Y, and Z because we're a school setting and that's what you have to do. We recognized that they were coming out of a very traumatic situation. And so we had to extend a lot of grace and love them out of the trauma into the ability to make good, sound, healthy choices. One of the things we're not doing is we're not looking at our kids' friend groups. We're not setting boundaries for them with friend groups. We're not doing curfews anymore. Eden, I mean, there's just so much that we're not doing. We really need to understand that children thrive. I did say that, thrive on discipline and structure.
No way.
No, that's hard
Really?
to believe.
Oh my goodness. I never would have thunk it.
And so we talk to our students a lot about how they can thrive by being self-disciplined. We talk about the difference between discipline and self-discipline. We talk about the difference between punishment and discipline. If we would start even early, let's talk about toddlerhood, right? If we would discipline, I'm not talking about punishment. Discipline is different than punishment. If we would discipline our children and set boundaries and parameters, they would thrive in that. And that's where we're missing it. We think that disciplining is taking the phone away for an hour. And then if they whine hard enough or beg loud enough or irritate us enough, we give it back to them, right? I mean, we just want to avoid the irritation. But we need to be invested. We need to know their friend groups. We need to not just know of them. We need to know them. We need to go back to inviting kids in. We need to go back to dropping what we've got going on and investing in them. And again, you don't have to have the Better Homes and Gardens house, and you don't have to have everything neat and orderly. As a matter of fact, they'd appreciate you more if you didn't. You know, they would be in their element if you left some clothes on the floor and didn't have all the dishes done. And
You know what I've noticed with teenagers, with the teenagers I had on the campaign trail and the ones that my husband and I spend a lot of time with, it's amazing what you will get out of them when you feed them.
Yes, you're
I
right. Yep.
I I ordered pizza and Coke. I mean,
Yep.
it is like, you know,
That's simple.
that's simple. And you put them around a table and you hear things that you would not expect. And, you know, these are mature teenagers, but they're still teenagers. They are going through all aspects, but it's amazing when you focus on them and act. And it's probably better that you're not a parent in some
Right.
aspects because you're going to get more out of them when you're not the parent. But what I'm finding is I absolutely last night I got a text from one of my teenagers. She's like, Miss Eden, I want to come over and help you with your business. And she said, I can't remember the name of what you call it, but I want to start helping you.
Yeah.
I said, you mean an intern? She's only 14. She's a freshman in high school over at Croatan. And I said, oh, of course. I would love to have you intern. I mean, somebody that young that has
Yeah.
that type of initiative, you know, that speaks volumes to what the parent is doing, the parents are doing, the grandparents are doing, the investment. But let's back it up for a hot second. Looking around the mental health epidemic that we have, not just in our teenagers and the suicide rates around this area, but even the gentleman I had on Friday, he's with a veteran service organization, Task Force Tribute, and we talked about the 22 a day rate
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
soldier suicide, veteran suicide.
Correct. Mm-hmm.
So there is a bigger crisis at hand, and it may be World Mental Health Day with the World Health Organization, but I believe Mental Health Day is every day.
Yeah.
I believe us checking in with one another is every day. Us reading scripture and holding on to truth is every day. Whether we choose to believe it or not, we need to.
Yeah.
You know, and us checking in with our tribe. You know, you're a part of my tribe. I have all these women around me who are a part of my tribe, and I am grateful for that. But we need to take a bigger step and take a look around. What are things that what are some of the trigger points that you see, and how do we develop a method to kind of prevent people from taking that final step, or for them to say, to feel safe to talk?
Yeah. Well, I think first and foremost, we have got to start breaking away from the labels.
Yeah.
That creates a stigma that is very, very challenging. Or Pastor Greg and I talked about it this morning a little bit with a 12-step program, for instance. Hi, I'm Marcie. I'm a recovering alcoholic would be a good way to approach that. Not, hi, I'm Marcie. I'm an alcoholic. Hi, I'm Marcie. I'm an addict. While those things might be true, my words have power. Our words have the power, according to scripture, to speak life or death. And even if you don't believe in the Bible, you know your words have power to speak life and death.
Mm-hmm.
So we've got to stop with the labeling. All these kids who are going through school, well, I'm ADHD. I have ADHD. A parent who says to me, well, you know, I'm Irish and I'm a Yankee. Like that just gives me reason to scream and yell and, you know, and be out of sorts.
Yeah.
So the sooner we can say, I am in recovery for, or
Yeah.
I am overcoming. That's my favorite one. I'll say, I am overcoming procrastination. I am overcoming depression. I
Yeah.
am overcoming these things. So the sooner we can encourage that kind of language, we're already starting to change the thinking. You know, this goes back to some of Dr. Caroline Leaf and some of the famous
Yes.
ones out there that we can
Yes.
rewire our brain. So if that's true, and we know that it is, there's plenty of science out there that our brain can be rewired, then we start doing that with our language. Mm-hmm. And I think that's one of the greatest challenges. Again, when they walk in the school, if I look at their cume folder before they ever walk in the door and I label them as the troublemaker, I label them as the one with autism, whatever the case may be, then already in my mind, I'm treating them a different way based on what I think they're going to do for me. So I purposely don't look at their folders for a little while so that I can make an informed decision on my own, and also so that I'm changing the lens that I'm looking at people through. Mm-hmm. This veteran suicide crisis, For veterans in general, I just hate it for them that we are an unappreciative, thankless society in general.
Yes.
And a lot of them would tell you they don't want the thanks anyway.
Right.
That's not why they're serving.
Yeah.
But we have to recognize people as people. One of the things I'm grateful for with my family is my parents raised us not to see race or creed or color or any of that. Right. So I see people as people. And the sooner we can stop labeling, then we can stop treating people based on the label. And then we can stop the stigma, because the suicide crisis comes in from a stigma. Mm-hmm. I'm not good enough. I'm not worthy enough. I can't do this thing. There's no other alternative. Mm-hmm. We're also creating that desire for help as a negative. We're already saying, if you reach out for help, I know this happens as the wife of a Scout sniper for 15 years. If you reach out for help, and forgive me if that's not the case today, if you reach out for help for mental illness, you're no longer a Scout sniper. We can't have you serving in our platoon because you don't have the right mentality or mindset. Right. So rather than get help, I want to stay in that position, right? I want to have those accolades or whatever the case may be. Or maybe it's not even that. Maybe I just want to be able to defend my country from that compass and from that stock. Right. And I can't do that and go home to my wife and my children because I devour them when I get home. Right. Or I don't know how to put the lion to rest ever. So really, honestly, we've got to get to a place where we say, it's okay. Even you said it with your tribe. It's not just veterans. It's not just that. Yeah. We don't even feel comfortable as a church, right? I mean, I cannot walk into church with my burden. I'm somehow supposed to leave the burden at home and sit in the pew without the burden, even though the man on the cross that I'm there to worship wants me to bring the burden.
Right, exactly. Yeah, I understand where you're coming from, the church aspect. I feel safer in a women's Bible study, the one I'm in, than going to church. And I know a lot of women out there resonate with me. Yes, we're supposed to be going to church. Yes, we're supposed to be a part of community. That's great. And yes, I agree. But when you feel unwelcomed, you feel like there's an exclusivity that is at that church. And that's a huge problem in our church. And I'm going to continue to beat that dead horse because I feel as though many churches have that realm. When I lived in New York, I attended Redeemer Presbyterian Church. It was a mega church, but I was able to be a part of a Bible study community, and I could go whenever, and I felt a part of a community, even though I didn't know half the people I was sitting next to. Right. But yet I was able and I was welcome because I came just as I was. You were not judged for how you dressed. You were not judged for your dollar amount next to your pay scale. You were not judged for your title. Now that was in New York. Now in DC, it was a different story. You were judged for your title. Yeah. And that's not the way church is supposed to be. So I could go on that rant for the rest of the day. We are at 9:30 a.m. Eastern time. Let's take a 2-minute break. And then we're going to come back with Marcie Friesner, and we're going to wrap up with Trinity Health Expo and talking about what you're going to be speaking at about the expo and talking a little bit about it. So we'll be right back. Okay, and we're back. It is 9:31 a.m. Eastern Time. It is Monday, October the 10th, and it is Columbus Day. And it also is World Mental Health Day. We are here with Marcie Friesner, and we are talking about Trinity Health Freedom Expo, which is happening on October the 15th and 16th. And it's trinityhealthfreedomexpo.com. And Marcie has the honor to speak at the expo this weekend, and it goes along with World Mental Health Day. So, Marcie, let's talk. I have up here on the screen, I'm sharing with everybody what I'm sharing your picture, obviously, and I'm also sharing the Health Freedom Expo, a little bit about that. I have worked with them over the years, and they are all about health freedom. But one of the biggest things that they really took away from the conversation with you and your speaking opportunity is mental health. So let's talk about what you are focusing on this weekend with the mental health speech you're going to be giving, and then also you're going to be signing your book and talking about your 40-day devotional.
Yeah, great. It's an exciting time for me. And the folks over at Trinity Health Expo, they've been really great, and I'm excited to join that little platform. I'm just going to read straight from the little description of the talk that I'm giving. It says, when the world around you throws you into survival mode, how do you rise above it? In 7 practical steps, I'll share my experiences and insights from the devotional, and also some proven strategies for rising above your circumstances and your own toxic thought patterns and into a life where you're thriving. I say, stop telling God how big your circumstances are. Tell your circumstances how big your God is. And so I'm going to talk people through 7 simple steps to go from staying in this negative toxicity to moving into the freedom to have a positive life. It's not that they won't come, right? The enemy is constantly going to throw these darts at us and try to trip us up.
Right.
But we need to know how we can walk through that. So first, we've talked about this already before the break, is understanding our identity in Christ and knowing God's word is true. And he makes a way where there doesn't seem to be a way. With Moses and the parting of the Red Sea, one of the most famous illustrations, the Israelites were doomed either way. Red Sea, Egyptian army behind them, there was no hope. And God tells Moses that he is the I am. And he makes their journey into the promised land possible with Moses sticking his staff and parting the Red Sea. The Bible says the faith of a mustard seed will move mountains. So we don't even really have to know it all. We don't have to have it all figured out. We don't have to know the scriptures and quote them. We just have to have that tiny mustard seed of faith to speak to the mountain. Great Chris McClarney song that I was rocking out to right before our interview started. But I'll speak to the mountain and I'll tell it to move. So again, perspective, you'll hear me say that over and over again. Perspective and choice. We have a choice to make. And are we going to stay in the negative, or are we going to move into the positive? What does that look like? And the sooner we gain that perspective, the sooner we can let God take his place. And then our only responsibility is the next step. And that is sometimes a mental health crisis, right? Because we are so about the dream for the future, where we're headed, retirement plans and investments. And we just know, and someday that house on the water in Florida. I mean, we live for today because of what we're going to gain from it later. But if tomorrow never comes, we've got to understand it's that, and I don't know who's responsible for dreaming this up, but tomorrow is a mystery. Yesterday is history. Today is a gift. That's why it's called the present. So the sooner we live in the gift of today and see it for the beauty that it is. I mean, we're speaking to the United States of America primarily. I mean, you may have listeners other places, but we're talking about the first world. Wow. I mean, if I could just transport everybody with me back to Haiti for that. You would so appreciate a roof over your head, running water. You just don't even understand. Part of my talk, I talk about the toilet paper crisis during COVID. You know, I was in Albania with 4 holes drilled in the ground at the capital city college university dormitories.
Yeah.
The University of Tirana, 4 holes drilled in the ground. Pick your spot. No stalls. I mean, we just really have to gain perspective. And then when we do that, we have the confidence to take the next step.
Well, I want to ask you something. Toxic thoughts. What gets us into that space? Why do we have those toxic thoughts? Is it a trigger that somebody said something to us? Is it a denial of an acceptance letter? Is it, he didn't ask me out on a second date? What gets us into that space, into that headspace? And how can we battle those toxic thoughts?
Yeah, it's definitely a combination of what you're saying. Any negative experience will create some space in our head, and then that space grows larger as we allow it to. So again, when we combat a negative experience with the understanding that God has a purpose for the allowance of that, because God is not the author of negativity, he is only good and can only do good things. So the sooner we recognize his power and our place in that, and I talk about this at the expo, and I talk about it in my book. For me, it's an instantaneous Jesus. I'm not using his name as a cuss word, because sometimes we do that. Jesus Christ. I mean, like, I know the power in the name of Jesus. So when a negative thought comes my way, for instance, just a brief little 2-month relationship I was in, I'll have a thought and it's usually not good. And then I say Jesus, because I know he can change that for me.
Yes.
The more times I do that, all of a sudden, I'm not even thinking about that man or that relationship. I'm already moving on to what's before me, whether it's continuing to put my eyeliner on or grading the next paper. But there's a constant bombardment of thoughts. And again, what you put in, you're going to get out. So Eden, we've got to encourage people, if they want to push out the toxicity, then they need to fill those rooms that are available for rent in their head with those positive spaces. So you said it, a tribe of women or men, Bible study, music has so much power. You have got to allow those spaces to be filled with other things. And I would also say that we have to set boundaries.
Yes.
So one of those, if I can just share a brief little testimony.
Yes, please.
One of the things that was most toxic in my life was mornings. I'm not kidding you. I hated mornings. My mother woke me up every morning for school, including being a senior in high school. And then when I went off to college, I went to the dorms and I had no choice but to set an alarm and get up. Then I learned that there were Saturday classes and there were evening classes. And so that helped me get rid of that morning dilemma by just making sure I didn't schedule any morning classes. But it has forever been a struggle for me until just a few years ago, when a dear friend was sitting with me. We were just having a time together. And I said, Linda, I really need you to pray for me, because these mornings are terrible. My school day starts at 10 o'clock today, 2022, Salt Night Academy, 10 to 3. But Linda sat with me and she said, well, what do you think it's rooted in? And I said, I don't know. She said, well, you need to really think about what that's rooted in. And I just said, I really don't know. You know, if I knew, I wouldn't still be struggling with mornings.
Right.
So then she said, well, how long has it been a problem? I said, my whole life. So she put her hand on my arm and she said, Marcie, you need to figure out what the root of that is. And I thought for a second. And I said, it's literally been there my whole life. And then I just started weeping, because I remembered from my earliest recollections of mornings, it was waking up to the sound of my father either hitting my mother or screaming at my mother, and hearing things breaking and hearing things shatter. And just there were days when I threw the pillow over my face and I tried to cut out the noise. But the majority of the days I got out of my bed and I got between mom and dad, because I knew dad wasn't going to act that way if I was present in the room.
Right.
And this all circles, this is his mental illness that he never got help for. and I'm not excusing his behavior with mental illness, because some of it was mental illness and some of it was just him needing to gain control of his anger. But a lot of it was the mental illness that he still struggles to get help for. She looked at me and said, Marcie, you are not that little girl.
Right.
And you do not have to be afraid of mornings.
Right.
It took that breakthrough, and it took my willingness to then say, okay, let's pray to that root. Let's break that root. I let her do some deliverance ministry and we prayed together. But then Eden and I had to take the next step. It wasn't enough just to say, okay, I've identified the root. I'm not gonna struggle with mornings. The next step was setting my alarm, not for an hour before I had to be up, because that's what I used to do, and not hitting snooze 6 times. But I had to decide that next morning. I said, God, if you will let me hear that alarm, because sometimes I didn't even hear it. If you'll let me hear the alarm, I promise to hit snooze 1 time for 21 days, because I know 21 days to make a habit.
Right.
If you'll let me do that, I promise to put my feet on the floor.
Mm-hmm.
At the first snooze, I'll put my feet on the floor.
Right.
And I promise you, God was so good to me that I was able to set my alarm and hit snooze 1 time and put my feet on the floor and look forward to what the day had for me.
Yes. Yes. That is such a powerful testimony, because there's so many people out there. They may never reveal what they are going through. They could be going through abuse in their homes. They could be going through neglect. They could be going through, I just lost a job. Who do I turn to? I'm about to lose my home. Who do I ask for help? And we live in such a society that it is not, if we show any signs of weakness,
right,
everybody is so pleased to show some, oh, look at them, and I remember in the years I lived in New York City and I spent a lot of time with the homeless population. One of my dear friends always said to me, he was like, we're not meant, Christ didn't call us to put people down. He called us to lift one another up.
right.
And as I sit here and listen to your testimony and seeing where God has led you, you are, you're the director of Salt and Light. And oh my gosh, those kids love you. I mean, I just love that place. It's a place of peace. It's a safe haven for those kids. And it's an opportunity for them to get a top-notch education. But also you writing the 40-day devotional, His Child. And you can, for anyone who hasn't had a chance to pick it up, please go to Amazon.com and pick it up. And in that, you're going to be seeing Marcie all over the place. She's going to be speaking at the Health Freedom Expo in Chicago this coming weekend. And there is still time to go out to Chicago. But in addition to that, in February, they're going to be doing the virtual expo. You will get to hear her speak yet again, along with many other opportunities are going to be placed in front of you. And I'm excited for that. As we head into this coming week, as we head into the holiday seasons, what are some final words that you would share with our audience? Our audience is all over the globe. Our audience is all over the nation. It is faith, family, freedom. It's focused on what is ahead. But with the holiday season, it is very hard for those who may be struggling with mental health issues during the holiday season. What do you share with people? How do you comfort people when the holidays come around?
I would say, most of us we know where our trigger points are. We know where our challenges lie. Mm-hmm. So you need to be intentional now. Don't wait. I tell everybody, my name is Marcie. I'm a recovering procrastinator. So don't do the Marcie and wait until the last minute to figure something out, because your thoughts have already taken you to a place that you won't come out of. Mm-hmm. Be proactive in your approach. When my parents lost their house to a fire, I was in college and I was serving the homeless. And my mother was devastated that she was not going to have this giant Thanksgiving meal at the table like she'd always had for, umpteen years. And I said, okay, so then you and Dad come with me and we'll serve at the soup kitchen on Thanksgiving. That'll put your life in perspective. So we made that choice to serve that Thanksgiving meal. And my parents were so blessed. They thought they were going there to bless the homeless. Those homeless men and women adored my mom and dad and sat down and got so much out of the conversation and the time that we spent with them. So I would say go ahead and tell the enemy right now that he has no place. You're not going to continue to live in isolation or live in the negativity, and make a plan for what you're going to do. I mean, it could be as simple as deciding. One year I decided, a friend of mine had a little rental on Emerald Island. It was just, okay, so I'm not even going to stay in the house where I'm reminded that my people aren't around.
Right.
I spent 2 nights at a little house on Emerald Island, rode my bike on the island, and just, spent time in the Word and listened to worship music. And I didn't even have to think about what was going on otherwise, because I was in a completely different environment. So I encourage people to just simply take that next step to what is bringing me joy. What can I look forward to as the holidays approach?
No, that's very good to leave on that note. One final note, though, before we let you go, and I know you have to get ready for your school day. One of my favorite quotes, and when I love talking with you, is never allow anybody to rent space in your head. Did I say it right? I know I paraphrased it.
Nope, you're good. I say it differently every time. So you're exactly right, because there are so many people. You're going to find very few in the Freedom Expo. I'm talking about that whole 7 positives to 1 negative. You may have heard it, for one negative comment, you need 7 positives to replace it. So you decide whether you're going to take what that someone said and allow it to stay, or you're just going to let it roll off, and you get to make that choice. And with God's help, again, utter the name of Jesus like you mean it, because it has power and authority.
Yes.
And you will continue to walk in freedom. Yeah.
Yes.
That's good.
On that note, I'm going to let you go. I know you have to get ready for school. We are just about 8 minutes until the show ends. Marcie Friesner, she's the author of His Child, director of Salt and Light Academy here in Swansboro, North Carolina, Eastern North Carolina. We're so great to have you here on World Mental Health Day. I look forward to having you back as we head into the holiday season and get to talk about all your adventures on your book tour.
Yeah, thank you for the invitation, Eden. Hope you have a wonderful day.
All right, you too. Bye-bye. So on that note, I am Eden Gordon Hill. This is Common Sense America. And if you've been tuning in this morning, we have been very much focused on World Mental Health Day, which is put on by the World Health Organization. And it is very focused on mental health across the globe. And as Marcie and I have been talking this whole morning, we have been talking about mental health crisis here in our nation. We've been talking about teen suicide. We've been talking about toxic thoughts. We've been talking about our faith and surrounding ourselves with a Bible study, surrounding ourselves with tribes of men and women we trust and who will lift us up, surrounding ourselves with people of encouragement, and also integrating ourselves into a community of service. You heard Marcie say during the holiday season, if it is a change, if it's not being surrounded by family, to get out there and serve. I know one of my favorite things to do during the holiday season is to serve the homeless populations, to be around women who are in different shelters, who are seeking to have a new hope and a new future. And there are many opportunities here in the Eastern North Carolina to focus on that. We also were talking about our veterans and the 22-a-day suicide that we need to keep in mind. We need to remember our veterans, our veteran caregivers, our veteran spouses, and we need to remember our hidden heroes who are the children of veterans. To keep that in mind and to do a check-in with them, people, not on their phones, not via text, don't use the phone, drive over to their house, or give them a call and make sure they pick up the phone. There's so much going on with the mental health crisis, and we need to do a check-in system. We need a buddy system. On that note, this week, we are going to be focused heavily on our faith, our freedoms, and our families. And tomorrow, Pastor Greg Young of Chosen Generation Radio, we will be doing a simulcast where we're going to be cross-pollinating our shows. And that will be tomorrow at 9:30 in the second half of the show. The first half of the show in the next couple of days, we'll be having Young Voices. And they are an amazing group out there that provide writers and authors and those of political thought. We're going to be talking about the inflation. We're going to be talking about the pain at the gas tanks. We're going to be also talking about the interest rates. And we're also going to be talking about Elon Musk and Twitter. And then in addition to that, we will have a special guest later in the week talking about what is Christian nationalism through the Family Research Council. And that will be Dr. Mark Harris. He is from the great state of North Carolina, but he works with Family Research Council. He is a pastor. He is a former member of Congress, and he's going to be talking to us about their event at Cornerstone Baptist Church, which is in Northern Virginia, by Pastor Gary Hamrick, and also former Congresswoman Michelle Bachmann, and also Tony Perkins with Family Research Council. We have a jam-packed week for you with amazing guests with thought. We would love to hear your comments, your suggestions, your ideas for guest suggestions and ideas, topics that you're interested in. I will tell you, I'm going to be headed on the road. We're going to be capturing some family footage. We're going to be doing some pie baking, pumpkin patches, and many other things in between. But on that note, we're going to take a quick break, and I will be right back. And we are back. And I tell you what, we have about 6 minutes left until 10 a.m. Eastern time. This is Common Sense America. I am Eden Hill. It is a joy to be with you on this beautiful day. The sun is coming out here in Eastern North Carolina. The weather is nice and cool. It is sweater weather, baby. I am so excited. We did not get to do our countdown this morning, so I'm going to do it now. Every day, we now do a countdown until midterm elections. So it gives you enough time to get out and register to vote or educate yourself on the candidates. And then we also do a countdown until the next presidential election in 2024. And then we're also doing more of a lighthearted and faith-inspired countdown until Christmas. So we'll start with 28 days until midterms, till November 8th. If you have not had a chance to register to vote, if you are a transplant to this area here in Eastern North Carolina or transplanted to North Carolina, get out and register and get ready to vote. Educate yourself on the Senate, on the House, on your local and on your state officials who are running. I know Friday night was a terrible date and evening time to do a Senate debate by Spectrum, but in fact, they did schedule it. And I had my cup of coffee, and I'll tell you, I watched the first 5 seconds of it and turned it off. So I'm going to be honest with you, people. Educate yourself on both Senate candidates. I'm going to leave it at that. Also, we have let me tell you, until 2024. And in that time period, people, we have time to really get out there, educate, and vote, whether it's being involved with your local leadership, whether it's being involved with Faith and Freedom Coalition here in North Carolina, whether it's being involved with Susan B. Anthony, Pro-Life America, getting out the vote, whether you're involved with North Carolina GOP, there are many groups out there to be involved to get out the vote. And as we get out the vote and we educate on the issues and educate on the candidates, be mindful of what is to happen in 2024. It looks like we're looking at about 757 days until November election for the presidency. So until then, people, we need to be praying. We need to pray that God would protect our nation, our homeland, that we would have leaders of faith, both in the White House, in the House, and the Senate, and the Supreme Court. We need to be praying because prayer changes things, people. We can talk all day long and we can sit on our tuchuses safely behind our desk or at our jobs, but we need to get up and we need to activate, we need to educate, and we need to look after the next generation. Also, on a lighter note, as you all know, I'm going to be doing some Christmas specials here in Common Sense America. Yeah, it is political and it is conservative, but we're all about God and family too. And so a lot of people who know me in this area know that I love to decorate. I love to do family-oriented opportunities and things. And we're going to be doing some Christmas tree decorating, home decorating. We're also going to be doing some pie baking, Hungarian pastry baking, and we're going to be visiting with family and friends up and down the Northeast as we celebrate harvest. We don't celebrate Halloween here, but we do celebrate harvest. Last year, my husband and I opened up our garage, invited our neighborhood. We had a huge cookout, but we did Happy Hollow Christmas because we want to focus on our faith more so than what Halloween really stands for. So this year we're going to be doing harvest. And then as we head into the Christmas season, our neighborhood puts on a huge event for hospice, and the whole neighborhood decks it out. It is a drive-through. It raises money, but it also brings a community together where we need to be coming together. So on that note, we have 76 days until Christmas, people. So if you are like me and want to go ahead and get shopping now, now's the time. If you want to start volunteering and serving around your community, now's the time to integrate yourself. If you are looking for ideas and tips and stories, we will have them here. We're going to be introducing you to some children's book authors for the holiday season. We're going to be talking about our faith, our freedom, and our families. And that is what this show is about. So for all of you who have been tuning in today, this is Common Sense America. I'm Eden Hill. Thank you for all of your support out there. Thank you to my family, my friends, my women's tribe. I'm grateful for all of you. We have a power-packed October and we are headed into November. It is right around the corner. So on that note, right before the 10 o'clock hour, you know what I always say, put on the full armor of God. It's time to get to work, people. We are called by God for such a time as this. Engage, educate, connect, communicate. Love you guys. We will see you tomorrow, bright and early, 9 a.m. Bring your coffee.